Hello there. So I've just finished watching the final episode of Series 3 of Stranger Things, and while I was watching it, I noticed a lot of similarities to the Matrix trilogy, and it got me thinking. Perhaps Stranger Things is actually another version of the Matrix. There are many versions of the Matrix. The version we see on screen isn't the only version that was ever created by the machines. There are probably a lot more similarities with the Matrix trilogy. If you spot any, let me know down below. Now, I should mention as well that this video contains spoilers, so if you haven't watched the Matrix, then to be honest, you should have done by now, and you should go and watch it this instant. And secondly, you should watch Stranger Things if you haven't. So let's get on with the list. Number 10. So in Stranger Things, there's a character called Eleven. She's one of the main characters, if not the main character, and her sort of unique point is that she has supernatural, apparently, powers. And mainly, that is telekinesis, the ability to actually control objects and move them around just through the power of her mind. In The Matrix, the character Neo has exactly the same power, both within the Matrix, the ability to stop bullets, as you'll see here, and also he can actually control the machines in the real world. And continuing on from that, in The Matrix there were also other characters with other supernatural skills, so there were some twins that could go invisible, and in Stranger Things we had Number 8, who had the ability to make people imagine whatever she wanted. Number 9. Unenlightened versus enlightened. So in The Matrix, we have those people like Neo and Morpheus and Trinity who are aware that the Matrix is a simulation and they know that there's a real world, and basically they're trying to escape the simulation. And in Stranger Things, we have a very similar situation. The main characters like Eleven and Jim Hopper, they know that there is a thing called the Underneath, and the entire series is about their relationship with that underworld. But the majority of the characters and all the sort of side characters are all completely oblivious somehow to this underworld. Number 8. And while we're on the topic, both The Matrix and Stranger Things feature two separate worlds. So in The Matrix we have the simulation, which is a bit like real life. It's the kind of normal human world where everybody's going about their normal daily business. And we have the real world, which is dark, there's no natural light, humans are all kind of used as batteries, a really bleak place, basically. And in Stranger Things, we have the real world, which is just like this, normal, with the Christmas tree. And then we have the Underneath, which is, again, dark, bleak. So yeah, very, very similar environments. Number 7. So one of the main bad guys in The Matrix is a thing called the Sentinel. It's a robot, basically, that flies around and tries to kill people in the Underneath. Oh, it's not called the Underneath, is it? The real world. They're so similar, I'm getting confused between them. Not really. But the Sentinels are sort of multi-legged robots. They look a little bit like robotic jellyfish. And in Stranger Things, we have, obviously, the Demigorgon, the Mind Flayer, who look like sort of giant spiders. They do bear a striking similarity. Obviously one is a robot and one is obviously some kind of animal or alien. And what's also similar about the Demigorgons and the Sentinels is that they are very, very powerful, and seemingly the only people who stand a chance of actually destroying or hurting them are the main characters. So this one really is extraordinary. This is one of the things that I saw on the screen and thought, hang on a minute, I've seen that scene before. So in The Matrix, there's a famous scene right at the end of The Matrix Revolutions where Agent Smith is being killed by Neo, and he is plugged into the Matrix physically. There are wires from the machines attached to his body, and he's kind of laid out there with his arms wide. But then I watched the last episode of Stranger Things, and there's a character, Billy, in that, who ultimately sacrifices himself as well. And do you know what? He is lying on the floor like that, with the Mind Flayer's proby bits attached to his body and the Mind Flayer directly in front of him. The camera angle, the lighting, the actual contents of the shot, they are identical, in my opinion, between The Matrix and Stranger Things. And I wanted to throw in an extra point, a number 11, if you will, little joke there, another similarity between The Matrix and Stranger Things. So in Stranger Things, the main character is called 11. In The Matrix, the main character is called Neo. Well, they're completely different, but actually, Neo is also referred to as the One in The Matrix. So they're both numbers, aren't they? Number 11 and number 1. And in fact, number 11 is number 1 twice. You see, very, very similar. So another one of the final scenes in Stranger Things is Jim Hopper fighting an evil Russian bloke in this room with a machine that's making a hole into the underneath. And I was watching that scene and thought, this looks remarkably similar to The Matrix as well. So they're fighting on a platform and they're mainly just kind of silhouetted in their fighting. And I've seen exactly the same shots and indeed the same similar sort of style of fighting used in The Matrix. But certainly the sort of camera angles and the robotic way that they were fighting, it was very reminiscent to me of The Matrix. Hopper gets hit in the face, spits a load of blood, which Neo does in one of the final scenes of the first Matrix movie, and then really what happened next blew my mind. Hopper looks at the camera and does a sort of bring it on motion with his hand, which is famously exactly what Neo does. 4. So again, in the final episode of Stranger Things, Billy is about to sacrifice himself to the Demogorgon, the Mind Flayer, but he's under the Mind Flayer's control and he's trying to kill number 11. But 11 performs a little sneaky trick. She remembers the things that she's telepathically learnt about Billy on the beach and her mum and the waves he was riding and what he said to his mother. She appeals to him emotionally, she even touches his face, and it's this love that she makes him remember that actually ultimately frees him from the Mind Flayer. Similarly, in the first Matrix film, Neo has been actually killed by Agent Smith, and Trinity says, well, you can't die because you're the One, and the Oracle said that I will fall in love with the One. And funnily enough, Neo comes back to life and defeats Agent Smith entirely. So again, he is actually saved by love. So in The Matrix, there's a sort of training suite, which is a completely white environment where the characters are seemingly suspended in nothingness. And in Stranger Things, 11 has a kind of mind palace where she can cut herself off from all sort of distractions and see what people are up to. And that is a completely black suspended environment. So their functions are different. They are physically exactly the same apart from the colour. So again, in the last episode of Stranger Things, we had the bad Russian guy fighting Jim Hopper, and his fighting style, the way he moved around, well, and in fact the way he spoke, it was very reminiscent of the Terminator, to be brutally honest with you. But it also reminded me that he looked a lot like Agent Smith in his kind of style of fighting as well. And he was also seemingly invincible. At one point he was even shot in the chest and he got up and carried on fighting. Very, very interesting. Now, he was actually wearing a bulletproof vest, so it wasn't that he was actually invincible, but certainly the way it came across on screen was that this guy is really like an agent in The Matrix. The only way that Agent Smith can be destroyed is in really extreme situations. So he gets surprised and actually run over by a train in the first film, and that does actually kill him, and he's able to respawn. And the only way that Hopper can defeat this bad Russian guy is to actually throw him into this weird laser contraption and completely rip his body apart. So yeah, more parallels there. 1. Now, in the second Matrix film, The Matrix Reloaded, we learn that Agent Smith has adapted and he's actually able to spread his program throughout the Matrix by sticking his hand in the chest of any person in the Matrix and turning them into another Agent Smith. In Stranger Things, in the third season, we have the Mind Flayer character who is able to actually spread himself into other characters. So we see giant armies of people who are under the control of the Mind Flayer. And ultimately, they can all come together and fight through a single person, which Agent Smith is also able to do in The Matrix Revolutions. So that completes my list of similarities between The Matrix and Stranger Things. Hopefully you can see what I was getting at. They seem like the same world. Perhaps Stranger Things really is just another version of The Matrix. Anyway, let me know down below if you agree with me. Let me know if you can think of any more similarities between The Matrix and Stranger Things. Do subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I shall see you next time for another one.